The room was full. Every seat at the table was taken, except one. The wobbly chair tucked against the far wall right next to the emergency exit, the one with the uneven leg that scraped against the floor every time someone bumped the table. Nobody wanted that chair. So without a second thought, they gave it to Marcus. He did not flinch. He didn't look around to see if anyone noticed. He walked to that corner, pulled out the chair with a steady hand, sat down, and folded his hands on the table, like a man who had made peace with something the rest of the room had not figured out yet.
Around him, 11 other people ordered expensive drinks and leaned into each other and laughed a little too loud. The company was celebrating tonight. A record quarter, new clients, big contracts, and Director Cole was standing at the head of the table with a glass raised high, soaking in every second of it. Nobody looked at Marcus. Nobody said his name. Not once, not even close. Marcus had been with Hargrove & Associates for 6 years. He had trained 4 of the people sitting at that table that night. He had built the entire client acquisition framework that the company was currently celebrating, the one that had quietly saved the firm $2.3 million in a single year. He had built it alone, at night, without being asked, because he saw a problem and he fixed it. He had done it the way he did everything, without noise, without performance, without waiting for applause. And it had cost him everything. The framework he built was now called the Cole Method. Director Cole had walked it into the boardroom 2 years ago and presented it as his own thinking, and the board had loved it. And Cole had been handed a promotion and a corner office and a seat at the head of every table since then. Marcus had been pulled aside quietly afterward and told with a practiced smile that he was not quite ready for a leadership role. He had nodded, he had gone back to his desk, he had kept working. Now he sat in the corner chair and listened to the toast. He raised his water glass when everyone else raised theirs. He smiled when the table laughed. But something was happening underneath all of that stillness. Something that had been bending slowly for 2 years had reached the end of its patience. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with absolute clarity. Tonight was the last night Marcus would ever sit in someone else's corner. He got home at 11:47 p.m. He did not turn on the television. He did not pour a drink. He sat down at his kitchen table, the same table he had eaten alone at for 6 years, opened his laptop, and stared at the blank screen. Then he began to write. He started with what he could see, not what he felt, not what was fair, not what he deserved, just what was real. He wrote down every person in the company who held actual influence. He wrote down every gap he had watched go unaddressed in Cole's division over the past 12 months. He wrote down 3 client markets that nobody at the firm was touching, entire verticals sitting wide open while Cole's team circled the same tired accounts they had always worked. He wrote down the name Sandra Park, the vice president of operations who had joined the firm 8 months ago and had been quietly, visibly frustrated with Cole's numbers ever since. Marcus had seen the tension in her face during presentations. He had filed it away and said nothing. He was done saying nothing. He kept writing, and as he wrote, something inside him began to shift. He stopped seeing himself as the man who had been overlooked and started seeing himself as the only person in the building who actually understood where the money was bleeding out, where the real opportunity was sitting unclaimed, and exactly what needed to happen to fix it. Cole had the title. Marcus had the knowledge. Those were not the same thing. They had never been the same thing. By 2 a.m., the decision was made. He was not going to quit. He was not going to file a complaint. He was not going to ask for a meeting to talk about his future with the company. He was going to build something so complete and so undeniable that Hargrove & Associates would have no choice but to move him to the front of the room,
or watch him walk out the door and take everything he knew with him. He started working at 3 a.m. He pulled up every piece of data he had been quietly collecting for months and began constructing a full market expansion proposal from the ground up. Real numbers, real projections, a clear strategy for entering 3 new client verticals within 18 months. No fluff, no corporate language designed to hide the absence of ideas. Just clean, honest, devastating work. He embedded his name into the metadata of every file. He saved every version with a timestamp. He was not going to let this one disappear. Outside his window, the city of Chicago moved slowly from black to the kind of deep blue that only exists in the hour before sunrise. Marcus did not sleep. For the next 47 days, he told no one what he was building. He came into the office on time, completed his regular work without complaint, and gave nobody a reason to look twice in his direction. But every night, the work continued. He reached out to Sandra Park on a Tuesday morning, not to complain about Cole, not to position himself or pitch himself or make an impression. He reached out because she had mentioned a specific operational problem in passing 3 months ago, and he had solved it, and he wrote it up in 2 pages with no preamble and sent it to her. She responded in 4 minutes. He started meeting quietly with 2 of the firm's largest clients, not to create problems for anyone, because he genuinely wanted to understand what they needed that they were not getting. They told him things they had never told Cole, because Marcus listened, because he had always been the one who actually listened, and they had always known it. At week 6, Sandra Park called him into her office and closed the door. She told him she had been watching. She told him she wanted to take his proposal directly to the board. Marcus said he thought that was the right move. At the board meeting, he presented for 15 minutes. No performance, no slides padded with noise. Just the work, clean and precise, walking the board through a plan that answered questions they had not even known to ask. When he finished, the room held a particular kind of silence. Cole was seated near the back. He recognized the architecture of what he was hearing. His expression did not change, but his hands pressed flat against the table, like he was trying to hold something down. The board chair leaned forward and asked why they had not heard from Marcus before now. Marcus looked at him calmly and said he had been there the whole time. 6 weeks later, there was another dinner. Same restaurant, same private room. But when Marcus walked in, Sandra gestured toward the chair at the head of the table. He sat down without hurry and took in the room. The chairs filled one by one. Cole walked in last. The only seat remaining was the one against the wall, next to the emergency exit, with the uneven leg that scraped the floor. Cole sat down and said nothing. Marcus opened the meeting. He never mentioned the chair. He never mentioned any of it, because the man at the head of the table does not need to. Between 3 a.m. and sunrise, nothing magical had occurred. No one had finally recognized his talent. No door had opened by luck. There had only been a man sitting alone in a quiet apartment who made a single decision and then refused to stop moving until the room caught up with what he had already built. They gave him the worst seat in the house because they thought it would keep him small. What they did not understand, and would not understand until it was far too late, was that Marcus had never needed the seat. He only needed the time.